Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest. It was a sultry Saturday evening, the kind where the air feels thick with possibility. A faint breeze carrying the scent of jasmine through the open windows of our beachfront villa. My husband, Ethan, and I had been married for 22 years. Our life together a tapestry of shared laughter, quiet moments, and the kind of love that weathers storms. At 44, I'd grown accustomed to our rhythm, comfortable, steady, like the gentle waves lapping against the shore outside. Ethan was my anchor, the man who knew every curve of my soul. But that night, something shifted, a subtle tremor that rippled through the foundation of everything I thought I knew. We were hosting a small gathering, just the three of us, Ethan, me, and Caleb, Ethan's best friend since their college days. Caleb had always been a constant in our lives, a brotherly figure to me, until that night, when his words ignited a fire I didn't know I'd been carrying. The villa glowed with a warm golden light, the flicker of candles on the driftwood dining table casting dancing shadows across the walls. The sound of the ocean mingled with the soft clink of wine glasses as we sat down to dinner, the aroma of grilled seafood and fresh herbs filling the air. I'd slipped into a deep navy dress that hugged my curves, the neckline dipping just enough to catch the light, my dark hair cascading in loose waves over my shoulders. Ethan, 46, was his usual charming self, his laughter booming through the room as he recounted a story from their college days, his blue eyes crinkling with mirth. Caleb, 45, sat across from me, his presence quieter but no less commanding. He had a rugged allure, tousled chestnut hair, a strong jaw dusted with stubble, and piercing gray eyes that seemed to see straight through you. I'd always noticed his intensity, but tonight it felt different, a smoldering heat that lingered in the air between us. As the evening unfolded, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Every time Caleb's gaze met mine, there was a depth to it, a silent intensity that made my pulse quicken. I tried to dismiss it, blaming the wine, a rich Merlot that left a warm buzz in my veins, but the tension kept building, a taut thread pulling at the edges of my awareness. Ethan seemed oblivious, his focus on the stories and the laughter, but I could feel Caleb's eyes on me, a quiet storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. My skin prickled under his stare, a flush creeping up my chest, and I shifted in my seat, the fabric of my dress brushing against my thighs, suddenly feeling too thin, too revealing. We'd just finished dessert, a decadent lemon tart that melted on the tongue. When the conversation lulled, the crackle of the candles and the distant crash of waves filling the silence. That's when Caleb spoke, his voice low and steady, cutting through the stillness like a blade. "You know, Elise," he said, his gray eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I've always thought you were more than just Ethan's wife." The words landed like a spark on dry tinder, igniting something deep within me. My wine glass froze halfway to my lips, the cool rim trembling against my fingers as I stared at him, my heart thudding against my ribs. Ethan, distracted by a notification on his phone, barely registered the comment, but I felt the weight of Caleb's gaze, a smoldering heat that seemed to strip me bare. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt, though my pulse raced, a wild, unsteady rhythm that echoed in my ears. Caleb leaned back in his chair, his fingers tracing the stem of his wine glass with a slow, deliberate motion that sent a shiver down my spine. A half smile tugged at his lips, a dangerous edge to it that made my stomach flutter. "I don't know how to explain it," he said, his voice a low murmur that seemed to wrap around me, pulling me closer despite my resistance. "It's just, there's always been this connection between us, don't you think?" His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and I felt a flush creeping up my neck, my skin tingling with a heat I couldn't ignore. I glanced at Ethan, hoping for some kind of anchor, but he was still engrossed in his phone, completely unaware of the storm brewing across the table. It felt like a dream, a moment where time slowed to a crawl, and I was standing on the edge of something dangerous, something I wasn't sure I could step back from. "Caleb, I started, my voice trembling, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass as I tried to find the words, but they wouldn't come. What was I supposed to say? Could I ignore the truth in his words, the way they echoed a longing I hadn't let myself feel in years? Or was this something that needed to be acknowledged, a fire that had been smoldering beneath the surface of our friendship for far too long? I don't mean it like that, Caleb added quickly, sensing my discomfort, his voice softening but still carrying that quiet intensity. It's not like I've ever wanted to cross a line. It's just, I've always seen you, Elise. You're not just a wife, a caretaker, a support system. You're you. He paused, his gaze never leaving mine, and I felt a jolt of heat surge through me, my breath catching in my throat. His words were a mirror, reflecting a part of me I'd buried beneath years of routine, a part I'd forgotten existed. I'd always seen myself as Ethan's wife, the one who held everything together, but hearing Caleb say that, seeing the way his eyes seemed to drink me in, a quiet hunger lurking beneath his calm exterior, it shook me to my core. Ethan's voice broke through the tension, a distant sound that felt like it came from another world. "What's going on? You two look so serious," he said, his tone light, oblivious to the charged atmosphere. "Let's do something fun. Maybe a game? How about charades?" I forced a smile, my heart still pounding, my skin flushed with a heat I couldn't shake. Caleb nodded, his eyes lingering on me for a moment longer, a silent promise that made my stomach flutter. "Sure," he said, his voice smooth, but I could feel the weight of his gaze, a smoldering intensity that left me reeling. The rest of the night passed in a blur, charades, laughter, the clink of glasses, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, a tectonic plate moving beneath the surface of our lives. Caleb's words echoed in my mind, replaying over and over, each repetition digging deeper into my thoughts. "You're not just a wife. You're you." It was a simple sentence, but it felt like a confession, a spark that had ignited something raw, something I'd buried beneath years of responsibility. As the evening ended, Ethan and Caleb said their goodbyes, and I stood at the door, watching them leave, the ocean breeze cool against my heated skin. I turned back into the villa, feeling like I'd just stepped off a cliff, the ground beneath me no longer solid. The next morning, I woke with a sense of unease, as if the world had tilted while I slept. I'd always prided myself on being in control, of my emotions, my thoughts, my life. But now, everything felt uncertain, a tangled mess of longing and fear. I rolled over in bed, glancing at Ethan beside me. He was still asleep, his chest rising and falling with a peaceful rhythm, his face relaxed in a way that made my heart ache. I envied his calm, the way he seemed to navigate life with such ease, while I was drowning in a storm of my own making. Caleb's words had unlocked something inside me, a part of myself I'd forgotten existed, and I didn't know what to do with it. I slipped out of bed, the hardwood floor cool against my bare feet, and padded to the kitchen, the scent of salt air mingling with the rich aroma of coffee as I brewed a pot. But even the mundane task couldn't quiet the chaos in my mind. I kept replaying Caleb's words, the way his gaze had lingered on me, the way his voice had seemed to caress my name. "There's always been this connection between us, don't you think?" The memory sent a shiver down my spine, a flush creeping up my chest as I leaned against the counter, my fingers trembling around the mug. Was he just paying me a compliment, or was there more to it? And why did it feel so significant, so dangerous? By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to talk to someone, to untangle the mess of emotions swirling inside me. I called my best friend Mia, her voice a lifeline in the storm. "Hey, it's me," I said, my voice tight, my fingers twisting the hem of my silk robe as I paced the living room, the ocean stretching out endlessly beyond the window. "I need to talk." "What's going on?" Mia asked, her tone immediately shifting to concern. "You sound off." I took a deep breath, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "It's Caleb, Ethan's friend. Last night he said something that's been haunting me. He said I wasn't just Ethan's wife, that he saw me for who I really am, not just a wife or a caretaker, but me." There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost hear Mia processing my words. "That's intense," she said finally, her voice careful. "What do you think he meant by that?" "I don't know. I admitted, my voice trembling, my fingers brushing against my lips as I tried to steady my racing pulse. It didn't feel like a joke. It felt like he was seeing me in a way no one has in years, not even Ethan. And it hit me, Mia. I don't know what to do with that. Mia let out a soft sigh, her voice gentle but firm. Look, I don't know what's going on with Caleb, but I do know this. You're your own person, Elise. Sometimes, when you've been in a marriage as long as you have, it's easy to lose yourself in the roles you play, to forget the parts of you that existed before all of that. Maybe this is a wake-up call. I don't want to lose that, I whispered, the weight of her words sinking in, my chest tightening with a mix of fear and longing. But I didn't expect it to come from him. It feels like I'm suddenly seeing myself through someone else's eyes, and it's unsettling. Mia's voice softened, a quiet reassurance that steadied me. Maybe it's time to take a step back, not to make any decisions yet, but to give yourself some space to think. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just let it breathe. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, her advice a balm against the storm in my chest. I'll try, I said, my voice soft. Thanks, Mia. We said our goodbyes and I hung up, the weight of the conversation settling around me like a heavy fog. But I couldn't shake the sense that something was about to change, a shift I couldn't ignore. That afternoon, I decided I needed to confront Caleb. The thought made my stomach flutter, a mix of nerves and anticipation, but I couldn't let this go on any longer. If I was going to make sense of what had happened, I needed to face it head on. I dialed his number, my hands trembling as the phone rang, my heart pounding in my chest. Hello? Caleb's voice answered, a deep, familiar timbre that sent a shiver down my spine. Caleb, it's Elise, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, my fingers tightening around the phone as I stood on the balcony, the ocean stretching out before me, a restless mirror to my own turmoil. I need to talk to you about last night. There was a pause on the other end, a quiet intake of breath that made my pulse quicken. Elise, he said, his voice softer now, a warmth in his tone that made my skin tingle. I was wondering if you'd call. What's on your mind? I swallowed hard, my voice trembling as I spoke. I've been thinking about what you said, about me being more than just Ethan's wife. It's been haunting me, Caleb. I don't know what to do with that. There was another long silence, and I could hear his steady breathing, a quiet rhythm that grounded me even as my heart raced. I didn't mean to make things complicated, he said finally, his voice low, a quiet intensity that made my breath catch. But I meant what I said, Elise. You're more than that. You always have been. I've known you for so long, and I've always admired you, not just as Ethan's wife, but as you, the woman you are. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're defined by just one thing. You deserve more than that. I felt a lump form in my throat, a wave of emotion crashing over me, raw and exposed. His words were simple, but they carried a weight that shook me to my core. I've been so focused on everyone else, on being everything for everyone, that I forgot about myself, I whispered, more to myself than to him, my voice trembling with the truth of it. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Caleb. I don't know what to do. His voice softened, a quiet reassurance that wrapped around me like a warm embrace. You don't have to do anything right now, he said, his tone gentle but firm. Just don't ignore what you're feeling. Don't bury it. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me, a strange mix of relief and fear washing over me. Thank you, Caleb, I said, my voice soft, a quiet gratitude settling within me. I think I needed to hear that. We said our goodbyes, and I ended the call, staring out at the ocean, the waves crashing against the shore with a restless energy that mirrored my own. Caleb's words had unlocked something inside me, a part of myself I'd buried for far too long, and I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. That evening, I decided to talk to Ethan. I'd avoided it for as long as I could, but the longer I held on to this secret, the harder it became to look him in the eyes. I needed to be honest, not just for the sake of our marriage, but for myself. We were sitting on the balcony, the stars glittering above us, the sound of the ocean a soothing backdrop to the tension in my chest. Ethan looked at me, his blue eyes soft but curious, sensing the shift in the air. Is everything okay? he asked, his voice gentle, a quiet concern that made my heart ache. I set my wine glass down, my hands trembling as I met his gaze, the cool night air brushing against my skin. "I need to talk to you about something," I said, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. "It's about Caleb. He said something to me the other night, something that's been bothering me ever since." Ethan's face tightened, a flicker of concern in his eyes as he leaned forward, his full attention on me. "What did he say?" he asked, his voice low, a quiet edge to it that made my pulse quicken. "He said I'm not just your wife, that I'm more than that," I said, my voice trembling with the weight of the truth. "And it made me realize something, Ethan. I've spent so many years being just a wife, a caretaker, that I've forgotten who I am outside of that, and I don't know what to do with that." Ethan was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable, a mix of confusion and hurt flickering across his face. "I never meant for you to feel like you were just a wife," he said finally, his voice low, a quiet vulnerability that cut through the tension. "But if I'm being honest, I've been so focused on everything else, work, the kids, that I've forgotten to check in with you, to really see you. Maybe I've been taking you for granted, Elise." The honesty in his voice was a balm against the storm in my chest, a wave of relief washing over me. It wasn't the reaction I'd feared. It was a moment of vulnerability, a rare glimpse into the man I'd shared my life with for 22 years. "I don't want to lose us," I said, my voice soft, my fingers reaching for his, the warmth of his touch grounding me. "But I need to find myself again, Ethan. I need to be more than just your wife." He nodded, his eyes softening, a quiet understanding passing between us. "I don't want to lose you either," he said, his voice steady, a quiet promise that made my heart ache. "Let's figure this out together." The days that followed were a blur of small but significant changes. Ethan and I talked more, really talked about things we'd once avoided, our fears, our dreams, our hopes for the future. We laughed, we cried, and we faced the uncomfortable truths we'd both been hiding from. There were moments of tension, yes, but there were also moments of deep connection that made it all worthwhile. We were learning how to be a team again, not just in name, but in spirit. One evening, about a week later, I took a walk along the beach, the sand cool beneath my feet, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold as the sun dipped below the horizon. I needed space to think, to process everything that had happened. As I walked, I let my mind wander, Caleb's words echoing in my thoughts. "You're not just a wife. You're you." For the first time in years, those words felt true, a quiet acceptance settling within me. I wasn't angry with Caleb. On the contrary, I felt gratitude. He'd unknowingly helped me see something I'd been neglecting for far too long, myself. I returned to the villa, the sound of the waves a soothing backdrop as I stepped inside. Ethan was waiting for me, his face lighting up when he saw me, a warmth in his eyes that made my heart swell. "I'm home," I said softly, my voice filled with a new strength, a quiet confidence I hadn't felt in years. He stood, walking over to me, his hand reaching for mine, the warmth of his touch a quiet promise. "I know," he said, his voice filled with love, a quiet understanding that spoke volumes. "I can see it." In that moment, I realized that the real change wasn't just in me, it was in us. We'd learned to grow together, not apart, to embrace the people we truly were, not the roles we thought we should play. And as I stood there, wrapped in Ethan's embrace, the ocean whispering outside, I knew that we were beginning something new. A love built on mutual respect, understanding, and the courage to face the truth. We'd be stronger, together and apart, because we'd finally learned to see each other for who we truly were.